Disclaimer. This story contains mature emotional and romantic themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The door wasn't supposed to open. I had only meant to grab my clutch from the dresser, already half lost in the quiet rush of getting ready. The soft rustle of fabric followed me as I stepped inside, but then I froze. Someone else was already there. Him. He stood near the mirror, unaware at first, sleeves rolled, adjusting his cuff with an ease that suddenly felt too intimate to witness. My breath caught, not because he was doing anything wrong, but because I wasn't meant to see him like this. Not in this quiet, unguarded moment that felt almost private. The air shifted when he noticed me. His reflection met mine before he turned, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between us. Shock flickered across his face, quickly masked, but not before I felt it echo inside me. Embarrassment followed, mine, his, something shared, yet neither of us moved. It was as if the room itself had stilled, holding us in place. I didn't know you were here, I managed, though my voice came out softer than intended. Neither did I, he replied, but his tone didn't quite match the words. Silence lingered, thick and fragile. I turned away first, pretending to fuss with the pleats of my dress, smoothing invisible creases just to give my hands something to do. My pulse refused to settle. I could feel his gaze still there, unmoving, deliberate. It made my skin warm, my thoughts blur in ways I couldn't explain. We tried, both of us, to act as though nothing had happened. As though this was ordinary, casual, safe. But it wasn't. Because when I finally looked up again just for a second, just to check if he had moved, he was still watching me. And this time, neither of us looked away. Something dangerous lingered in that eye contact. Something neither apology nor distance could erase. I should have left then. Walked out, laughed it off, buried the moment like it never existed. But my feet didn't move. And neither did his. Because deep down, beneath the awkwardness and the quiet tension, there was a pull, unspoken, undeniable, that neither of us seemed ready to fight. And maybe that was the real problem. Because if this moment wasn't meant to happen, why did it feel like it had been waiting all along? I told myself to move, to step away, to break whatever invisible thread had wrapped itself around us in that moment. But as I shifted, the soft fabric at my waist resisted me. The pleats I had been fussing over just seconds ago had twisted into a stubborn knot near my side, pulling the entire drape unevenly. A quiet breath escaped me, half frustration, half nerves. I think it's stuck, I murmured, not entirely sure why I said it out loud. He didn't hesitate. Let me, he said, his voice lower now, steadier, but it carried something else beneath it, something that made my pulse stumble. I should have refused. Instead, I stood still. He stepped closer, careful at first, as though testing the space between us. The warmth of his presence reached me before his hands did. Then gently, his fingers brushed the fabric near my waist, trying to find where it had caught. But it wasn't just the fabric he touched. It was the awareness of him. His nearness, his focus, the quiet concentration in his movements, that unraveled me. Hold still, he said softly. I almost laughed at that. Because stillness was the one thing I couldn't manage. My breath had already gone uneven, rising and falling in shallow waves. I could feel him closer now, close enough that if I leaned back even slightly, I would touch him. The thought alone sent a flicker of heat through me. His fingers worked slowly, carefully, brushing against my side more than once, each accidental contact lingering just a second too long to feel like nothing. My hands clenched lightly at my sides, unsure of where to go, what to do. Almost got it, he murmured. But his voice had changed. It wasn't just focused anymore. It was aware. The kind of awareness that made silence louder, that made every breath feel shared. I glanced at the mirror without meaning to. And there we were. Too close. His face just behind mine. His gaze no longer on the fabric but lifted, meeting mine again. This time there was no shock. No confusion. Just something heavier. Something neither of us named. The knot loosened under his hands, the fabric falling back into place as if nothing had ever been wrong. But neither of us stepped away. Not immediately. For a heartbeat, maybe two, we stayed like that. Suspended. Balanced on the edge of something we both understood. and both avoided. Then suddenly, as if the moment burned too hot to hold, we pulled apart. Too quickly. Too aware. And yet, not nearly enough to forget what had just passed between us. The house felt different at night. Too quiet. Too aware. The sudden power outage had swallowed everything in darkness, leaving only the faint glow of a single candle trembling on the table between us. I hadn't expected anyone else to still be awake, hadn't expected him to be here again in the same space, as if the evening had decided it wasn't done with us yet. Thunder rolled somewhere far away, low and distant. I wrapped my arms around myself, not from cold, but from something far less manageable. The silence pressed in, amplifying every thought I had been trying to ignore since earlier. Every glance. Every almost. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, stripped of its usual steadiness. I nodded too quickly. "I'm fine." But even in the dim light, the lie felt obvious. He didn't call it out. He just stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Just enough to be felt. "You don't look fine," he said gently, and something in me cracked. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a quiet unraveling. The kind that happens when you've been holding too much inside for too long. I looked away, blinking back the sudden sting in my eyes, frustrated with myself for letting it show. "I don't even know why I'm like this," I whispered. His presence shifted, closer now, careful but certain. "Hey," he murmured. His hand lifted, hesitated, hovering near my arm, as if asking for permission without words. When his fingers finally brushed against me, it was barely there. Light. Reassuring. But it felt like everything. My breath caught, not because of the touch itself, but because of how easily it grounded me. How naturally I leaned into it just a fraction, before realizing what I was doing. We both stilled. The candle flickered. I looked up. He was already looking at me. Closer now. Too close. The space between us had thinned into something fragile, something charged. I could feel his breath, warm and uneven, mingling with mine. My heart pounded so loudly it felt impossible that he couldn't hear it. Neither of us moved. Not forward. Not back. His gaze dropped for a moment, to my lips, then back to my eyes, and that was enough to send a wave of heat through me, sharp and undeniable. This was the edge. The moment where everything could change. Where one small movement, just an inch closer, would erase every line we had been trying not to cross. But we didn't. We couldn't. Not yet. A sudden crack of thunder broke through the silence, sharp and grounding. And just like that we stepped back. Breathing uneven. I still searching. As if pulling away had only made it harder to pretend there was nothing there at all. The silence didn't return the same way after that. It lingered differently now, thicker, warmer, filled with something neither of us tried to deny anymore. The storm outside softened into a distant murmur, as if the world itself had stepped back, leaving only the quiet rhythm of breath between us. I don't remember who moved first, only that the distance we had guarded so carefully disappeared. His hand found mine, not hesitant this time, not unsure. Intentional. Warm. My fingers responded instinctively, threading with his as though they had been waiting to belong there. The contact sent a quiet shiver through me, not from surprise but from recognition. This was no longer accidental. This was chosen. "Are you sure?" he whispered, his voice barely louder than the fading rain. I nodded just once, but it carried everything. And that was enough. The space between us closed slowly, almost reverently, as if rushing would break something fragile. His other hand rose, brushing along my arm, leaving a trail of warmth that settled deep beneath my skin. I felt it everywhere. His nearness, his breath, the steady presence of him grounding the chaos inside me. When I leaned closer, it wasn't urgency. It was surrender. My forehead brushed his first, a pause, a quiet moment to breathe him in, to let the reality of this settle into something real. His exhale met mine, warm and unsteady, and for a second we simply stayed there, sharing the same fragile, fleeting space. Then everything softened. Hands became language, slow, searching, certain. His touch wasn't hurried. It was careful, as though he was learning me in real time, memorizing the way I responded, the way I leaned into him without thinking. My fingers traced the line of his shoulder, feeling the tension there ease beneath my touch, as if we were both unraveling at once. Fabric whispered as it shifted, unnoticed, unimportant, falling away from the moment rather than defining it. The world narrowed to warmth, to closeness, to the quiet, unspoken rhythm we found together. "You feel that?" he murmured against the hush between us. I didn't trust my voice, so I answered the only way I could, by staying, by holding on, by letting myself sink fully into the moment we had been circling all night. There was a softness to it, unexpected and grounding, but beneath that softness something deeper pulsed, something hungry, something that had been waiting far longer than either of us wanted to admit. And yet, even in that intensity there was care. Every movement asked, every touch answered. Time blurred, stretching and folding into something that felt suspended, like the night itself was holding its breath around us. No rush, no need to escape it. Only the quiet understanding that this, whatever it was, had changed everything. And when we finally stilled, still close, still caught in the warmth of what we had allowed ourselves to feel, nothing about the silence felt uncertain anymore. The silence afterward felt unfamiliar. Not empty, not uncomfortable, just different. I pulled the edge of the fabric closer around myself, more out of instinct than necessity, my fingers fidgeting as if they needed something to hold on to. The candle had burned lower, its flame softer now, casting quiet shadows that danced along the walls. Everything looked the same, and yet nothing felt the same. Neither did we. I glanced at him, then quickly away when I realized he was already looking at me. There was something new in his expression. Not the tension from before, not the uncertainty. Something quieter. Something deeper. "Hey," he said softly. Just that one word, and somehow it carried too much. I let out a small, nervous breath, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Hey." It almost made me laugh. How ordinary it sounded after something that felt anything but ordinary. For a moment, neither of us knew what to do next. Do we move closer again? Do we step back? Do we pretend? My heart hadn't quite settled yet. It still carried the echo of everything we had just shared, every glance, every breath. And now, standing here with space between us again, I felt it. An ache I hadn't expected. Not regret. Just wanting more. "You okay?" he asked, quieter this time, as if careful not to break whatever fragile thing had formed between us. I nodded, though my voice betrayed me. "Yeah. I just didn't think." A sharp knock cut through the room. Both of us froze. Another knock followed, louder this time. Urgent. My stomach dropped instantly, the warmth of the moment replaced by a cold rush of reality. We looked at each other, the same thought flashing between us without needing words. Someone was at the door. "Are you in there?" a voice called out from the other side, clear enough to recognize. Everything shifted. Too fast. I stepped back instinctively, my hands moving quickly now, adjusting, fixing, trying to pull myself back together as if the last few minutes could be hidden, erased, undone. My pulse spiked for an entirely different reason now. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply, the calm from moments ago replaced with tension that felt just as intense, but sharper, more dangerous. "They can't." I started, my voice barely above a whisper. Another knock. This time impatient. Our eyes met again, and in that split second, everything we had just shared didn't disappear. It deepened, became heavier, riskier, because whatever this was between us, it wasn't hidden anymore. Not really. And somehow that made it impossible to ignore. The knock didn't come again. Instead, silence followed, thick, waiting, almost deliberate. Whoever stood outside must have assumed no one was there, or chose not to wait any longer. But the damage had already been done. The moment had been broken. And yet somehow it hadn't. I let out a slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, my fingers still gripping the edge of my sari where it had nearly unraveled earlier. The pleats I had tried so hard to fix before leaving now sat imperfect, slightly uneven, as if they too carried the memory of everything that had happened. He noticed. Of course he did. His gaze softened, a faint, almost disbelieving smile touching his lips. "You never finished fixing it," he said quietly. I looked down, then back at him. "I got distracted." The words lingered between us, Light on the surface, heavy underneath. For a second, neither of us moved. Then slowly, carefully, he stepped closer again. This time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty, just something calm, certain, chosen. "Come here," he murmured, his voice steady in a way that made my heart race all over again. I didn't argue, didn't question it. I turned slightly, giving him space, feeling his hands return to where they had been before. At my waist, adjusting the pleats with a gentleness that felt entirely different now. Not just careful, familiar. His fingers worked slowly, smoothing the fabric, aligning it with quiet precision. But it wasn't really about the sorry anymore. It was about the closeness, the quiet understanding, the way neither of us pretended this meant nothing. My breath softened as I stood there, letting him finish what I had started hours ago. What had somehow led us here? "You're going to be late," he said under his breath. I know, but I didn't move. Neither did he. When he finished, his hands lingered just a second longer than necessary. Not accidental, not unsure, intentional. I turned back to face him, the space between us almost non-existent again, but softer now, less urgent, more certain. "Are we going to pretend this didn't happen?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. His eyes held mine, steady, unflinching. "No," he said simply, and that was it. No grand promises, no dramatic declarations, just truth. Outside, the world waited. The party, the noise, the expectations. But inside this quiet room, with my sorry finally set in place and the air still carrying the warmth of everything we had shared, we chose not to walk away. Not tonight.